The first scream didn't come from a person. It came from a gull. One sharp, shocked cry that sliced the morning haze above Newport Harbor. Aisha Moore looked up from the dock where she was tightening the strap on her faded lifeguard backpack. She'd come early to the marina to film the sunrise spilling gold on the water for her little channel, the one where she posted ocean facts and goofy sea shanty remixes for exactly 412 subscribers. The sky was still the color of a soft peach when she noticed the change in the air. Smoke, at first a silver thread, then a darker ribbon pulled hard by the breeze. "Is that a flare?" asked Nora, her neighbor from slip B17, shading her eyes. Aisha followed the line of smoke. 3 moorings out, a white hull flashed orange as something flickered on its deck. Not a grill, not a sunrise trick. Fire. "Boat's on fire!" a dockhand yelled, already fumbling with a radio. Aisha didn't wait. She dropped her phone into her backpack, toe-kicked off her sneakers, and sprinted. The marina's wooden planks thudded beneath her feet. Thunk, thunk, thunk. Rope coils and crab pots blurring past. She'd taken junior lifeguard courses since she was 10, and everything in her moved with that muscle memory. Spot, plan, act. "Kid, wait!" the dockhand shouted. She tore past him, grabbed the orange rescue can from the emergency stand, and leapt. The water cupped her with a cold slap. When she surfaced, the sounds multiplied. Radios crackling, a horn bleeding, someone yelling to call 911. She cut her strokes clean and steady, crossing the green distance with a crawl she'd practiced 1,000 times in calmer water. The yacht had a name in silver script across its stern. Seraphim. Up close, it wasn't flames licking the hull. It was smoke boiling from a cabin vent, and a thin tongue of fire crouched along the aft seating. Aisha tossed the rescue can over the swim platform, hauled herself up, and dragged her wet feet toward the sliding glass door. Heat pressed her face. The air tasted like a burned battery. "Hello?" she called, one hand over her mouth. "Anybody on board?" A coughing answer, thin as a thread. "Here, here." The voice came from inside. She slid the door wide enough to duck through, squinting into the dim. The salon was all pale leather and glass, the kind of clean richness you only see in magazines, now smeared with smoke. A man lay crumpled near the companionway, his gray hair matted, one sleeve blackened. The ring on his hand caught a weak shard of light, platinum with a crest. "I've got you," Aisha said, dropping to her knees. She tried to roll him. He groaned. Conscious, but barely. Something hissed behind her. The fire popped as a cushion seam gave way. She needed to move. Now. "Sir, can you hear me?" she asked, voice steady because she'd learned that steadiness gets borrowed. "We're getting off this boat." He blinked, dazed, eyes startlingly blue through the soot. "The case," he rasped, "under the table." He gestured weakly at a slim aluminum briefcase wedged beneath a bench. "Later," she said, looping the rescue can strap under his arms. "First, air." She half dragged, half lifted him toward the door, lungs burning. Behind them, smoke thickened, swallowing the neat lines of glass and chrome. Outside, a small patrol skiff was cutting hard through the chop, its siren a fast strobe of sound. Another voice, Nora's, shouted from the dock, "Aisha, Coast Guard's 2 minutes." 2 minutes could be forever. She hauled the man across the threshold, felt his weight sag on the deck, and did a quick check, breathing shallow, pulse a nervous flutter in his throat. She tilted his chin, keeping his airway clear, then scanned the cabin one more time against every instinct that told her to flee. The briefcase glinted where he'd said it would. She grabbed it with her free hand and kicked it across the deck to the swim platform. "Hold on," she told him. "We're almost out." The fire's tone changed, lower, uglier, finding something new to eat. Heat rolled, heavy as a hand. She shifted him again, lips counting her breaths because counting kept her focused. By the time she got him to the swim platform, the patrol skiff was close enough for a rope toss. A uniformed officer, young, freckles, eyes all business, threw a line, and Aisha caught it one-handed, looping it through the stern cleat. "Can you jump?" the officer yelled. "I'm getting him in first," she yelled back. They timed the movement with the water's rise. On 3 heaved breaths, she guided the man into the embrace of 2 waiting arms. He vanished into the skiff as if swallowed by rescue itself. A hand shot back out for her. She pushed the briefcase into it, then dove to avoid a sudden cough of flame. When she was hauled aboard, the world shrank to the skiff's rubber gunnel, the officer's face, and the man's chest, still moving, but wrong. Training snapped into place. Aisha slid to her knees beside him. "Sir, stay with me," she said, checking for breath again. It stuttered, failed, returned as a gasp. She sealed her hands, center of his sternum, and pressed. 30 compressions. Check. Breath. Again. The skiff thudded over a wake. She rode it with the rhythm, counting. Heat swelled from the burning yacht as if the water itself were exhaling. Sirens converged. Another Coast Guard boat, a fire unit foaming the Seraphim's deck, a harbor patrol officer yelling coordinates into a radio. Aisha didn't look up. She pressed and breathed, until the man's chest seized in a cough and color trembled back into his face. He blinked, eyes finding her through the smoke blur, and for a beat his gaze sharpened not with panic, but with something like recognition. "Evelyn?" he whispered. Aisha froze. "No, I'm Aisha." His eyes drifted to the pendant at her throat, an oval locket with fine scratches. He touched it with a shaking fingertip, like someone verifying a ghost. Then the medic shouldered in, oxygen mask already hissing. "Good work," the medic said to Aisha, voice clipped. "We've got him." Only then did she notice the small lens pointed at her, a tourist on a nearby bow, filming with a trembling phone. The shot caught the medic, the gray-haired man on oxygen, the aluminum briefcase wedged by a coil of rope, and Aisha, salt water in her braids, soot streaked on her cheek, the locket bright against her wet t-shirt. The patrol officer leaned in. "Do you know who that is?" Aisha shook her head, chest heaving as the adrenaline finally crashed. "That's Sterling Vale," he said. The Sterling Vale. The name landed like a dropped anchor. Billionaire founder of Vale Systems, magazine covers, stadium naming rights, a yacht called Seraphim that looked better burning than most boats did shining. Aisha glanced at the man behind the mask. Older up close, the lines around his eyes cut like stories. And then at the locket he'd touched as if it were a telegram from another life. The medic lifted the briefcase to make room for a stretcher. Its combination dials ticked as it shifted, locked tight, secrets humming. On the dock, sirens braided with the gulls' cries. On a dozen phones, the video of a black girl hauling a billionaire from a burning yacht began to climb through feeds like a spark finds wind. And somewhere, Aisha didn't know where yet, someone watching that pendant and that briefcase whispered, "It can't be, not after all these years." She shivered, not from cold, from the feeling that the fire she'd just escaped had only lit the first fuse. The paramedics moved with practiced precision, strapping the billionaire onto a stretcher as if his fortune meant nothing. To them, he was just another body needing air. The oxygen mask hissed, IV lines clicked into place, and someone shouted vitals over the roar of the fireboat's pump. Aisha sat back on the skiff's deck, salt drying on her skin, her chest heaving in uneven rhythms. She watched as the medic's gloved hands pressed against Sterling Vale's arm, searching for a vein. His blue eyes flicked open briefly, catching the light, and for a second they landed on her again. Not gratitude, not confusion, recognition. "You shouldn't," he rasped through the mask, voice thin as smoke. "You shouldn't have that." Aisha blinked. "Have what?" His gaze fell to the silver locket on her chest, the one she'd worn since childhood, handed down from her mother, who said it belonged to a father Aisha had never known. Before she could ask, he slipped into unconsciousness again. The Coast Guard skiff cut hard toward the marina, spray glittering in the sun. By the time they docked, the pier was a frenzy. Cameras, microphones, curious onlookers leaning over rails. Nora was there, shouting her name, while uniformed officers tried to corral the crowd. "Back, please! Back!" a harbor master barked. "Let the medics through!" Aisha followed the stretcher off the boat, legs wobbly from exhaustion and adrenaline. Her soaked clothes clung to her frame, every step marked by the squish of waterlogged socks. She wanted to vanish into the crowd, to retreat home and breathe, but a reporter spotted her. "Miss, did you just save Sterling Vale's life?" The question ripped through the noise like a flare. Cameras pivoted, lenses locking onto her. She raised her hands instinctively, backing up. He was on fire, Another reporter shoved forward, phone recording. "How do you feel knowing you rescued one of the richest men in the world?" The crowd buzzed, voices layering until the moment blurred. Someone shouted, "Hero!" Another yelled, "Was it staged?" Aisha's stomach knotted. She'd come to film the sunrise. Now she was the headline. Police finally pulled a cordon, funneling the ambulance away. Sterling Vale's yacht still smoldered, foam coating its blackened shell. Aisha caught sight of the aluminum briefcase wedged under the stretcher as the doors closed. Her pulse quickened. The case. His last words. Her locket. "Miss, we'll need your statement," a harbor patrol officer told her, pulling her gently aside. "Yeah, of course." Her voice sounded far away in her own ears. They brought her into a cramped station office that smelled of salt and coffee. She sat on a metal chair, her wet hair dripping onto the tiled floor. Across the table, a weary officer tapped notes into a tablet. Name? Aisha Moore. Age? 17. The officer raised his brows. 17 and dragging billionaires out of burning yachts. Quite a morning. She managed a shaky laugh. "I just did what I was trained to do." As the questions continued, time of sighting, details of smoke, how she entered the vessel, her mind replayed his words. "You shouldn't have that." What did he mean? By the time they released her, the sun was high and the marina buzzed like a hive. Nora was waiting, arms wide. "You crazy brave girl," she said, hugging her tight. "Half the internet's already talking about you." Internet? Nora held up her phone. The video had gone viral. Aisha hauling the billionaire onto the rescue skiff, CPR compressions under the screaming sky, the briefcase sliding into frame. Millions of views already. Comments flooded below. Praise, speculation, conspiracy theories. "Great," Aisha muttered, covering her face. "Exactly what I didn't need." That evening, home felt different. Her small apartment above the laundromat buzzed with texts, her inbox flooding with interview requests. Mom was already waiting, arms crossed, eyes scanning her daughter with equal parts pride and worry. "You scared me half to death," she said, voice trembling. "But I'm proud. You saved a life." Aisha smiled weakly, peeling off her damp hoodie. "He wasn't just anyone, Mom. It was Sterling Vale." Her mother froze. The name drained color from her face. "What did you say?" "The Sterling Vale. Billionaire. He knew me, Mom. Or at least he knew this." She touched the locket at her chest. Her mother's breath caught. She turned away, hands gripping the counter. "Mom?" Aisha stepped closer. "Do you know something?" For a long time, her mother said nothing. Then she whispered, "That locket didn't just belong to your father, Aisha. It belonged to him." Aisha's heart hammered. "Wait, you're telling me—" Before she could finish, a knock thundered on the door. Nora's muffled voice called, "Aisha, reporters are outside, like, a lot of them." Mother and daughter stared at each other, words unsaid pressing heavier than the noise below. By nightfall, the street outside was clogged with cameras and vans. Headlines flashed across TV. "Black teen saves billionaire from burning yacht." Commentators speculated about the mysterious briefcase, about the girl with the locket Val had reached for before collapsing. In her room, Aisha sat cross-legged on the bed, the pendant cool against her skin. Her phone buzzed non-stop, notifications stacking. Among them, a single unknown number lit her screen with a short message. "We need to talk." SV. Her stomach dropped. He was awake. He wanted her. The secret, whatever it was, had only just begun to surface. The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and faint smoke, as if the fire had clung to Sterling Vale's clothes even after they'd cut them away. Machines beeped a steady rhythm. Oxygen hissed soft through clear tubes, and curtains rustled with every breeze of footsteps in the hall. Outside, reporters swarmed the entrance. Security kept them back, but their shouts leaked through the revolving doors. "Sterling, who's the girl? What's in the briefcase?" Flashbulbs popped against the night sky like fireworks. Inside, Sterling Vale lay propped against crisp pillows, his blue eyes half-lidded but sharp. A nurse checked his vitals, scribbling notes before leaving with a sympathetic smile. The door clicked shut, and for the first time since the fire, silence held. Sterling turned his head, slowly, painfully, toward the chair at his bedside. Aisha sat there, knees bouncing, the silver locket glinting at her throat. She hadn't wanted to come. Her mother begged her not to, but the text had pulled her here like a tide. "You came," Sterling rasped. His voice was rough, but beneath it lived authority, the kind that built companies and silenced boardrooms. Aisha swallowed. "You asked me to." He studied her face, scanning features like a map he thought he knew. Finally, his gaze locked on the locket. His chest rose unevenly. "That should never have reached you." Aisha leaned forward, frustration and fear twisting in her gut. "Why? My mom told me last night it was yours. that you gave it to her before I was even born. So what does that make me to you?" For a moment his expression cracked. Guilt, sorrow, something like recognition. But then his jaw tightened and he shook his head. "You don't know what you're asking." "No," Aisha shot back. "You don't get to nearly die on a yacht, grab my necklace like it's some ghost, and then tell me I don't know. I saved your life, Mr. Vale. The least you can do is tell me the truth." Sterling's eyes glistened, not from weakness but from something heavier. He shifted against the pillows, wincing as pain lanced his side. "You're strong," he murmured. "Stronger than she ever was. Evelyn, she deserved better than me." Aisha's breath hitched. "Evelyn? That's my mom's name." "Yes," he whispered. "Your mother. Years ago, before the money, before the boardrooms, I loved her. But I was too young, too proud, and too terrified of losing the empire I was building. When I learned she was pregnant, His voice broke. "I walked away." The words hung heavy in the sterile air. Aisha blinked fast, her throat tightening. "So all these years you knew, and you just left?" He nodded once, shame carved into the lines of his face. "I thought cutting ties would protect her from the vultures that circle money, but it only protected me. She raised you alone. I see that now." Aisha's fists clenched on her knees. Anger surged, sharp and hot, but tangled with the ache of finally hearing the truth she'd begged her mother for as a child. "You're saying you're my father?" His blue eyes, mirrors of her own, didn't waver. "Yes." The monitors beeped steadily, indifferent to the collapse happening between them. Aisha's world spun. She'd gone from anonymous teenager to viral hero in less than a day. And now, in the sterile glow of a hospital ward, she'd been handed a revelation that rewrote her entire life. "You don't get to just say that," she whispered, voice breaking. "You don't get to confess it now, when the whole world is watching, when it makes a headline for you." Sterling's face hardened. "This isn't for headlines. If anything, it will destroy me. The board, the shareholders, they'll tear me apart for keeping something like this hidden. But the truth doesn't care about timing. And you deserve it." Silence stretched, thick with unspoken years. Finally, Aisha stood, pushing the chair back with a scrape. "I don't know what I'm supposed to feel right now. Grateful I saved you? Angry you left? Or terrified because now every reporter out there is going to find out too?" Sterling reached for her wrist, his grip weak but pleading. "Don't let them twist this. The briefcase, inside it are documents, letters, proof. I kept them locked away all these years. If they leak, the world will know before you're ready. You must protect it." Aisha froze, remembering the gleam of the aluminum case sliding across the skiff's deck. "Why me?" "Because," he rasped, voice breaking again, "you're my daughter, and the world won't show you mercy when they learn it." A knock shattered the moment. Dana stepped inside, expression tight. "Aisha, it's time. Reporters are camped downstairs. If you don't leave now, they'll never let you go." Sterling sagged back against the pillows, eyes closing. "Go. We'll talk again." But Aisha lingered, staring at the man who had haunted her life as an absence and now reappeared as a confession. She touched the locket, its weight suddenly heavier. Then she turned and followed Dana out. The hospital corridor buzzed with chaos. Flashbulbs strobed through the windows, voices clamored. Dana pressed a hand to Aisha's shoulder. "Listen," she said firmly. "Whatever he told you, keep it close for now. The world will smell blood in this, and you don't owe them anything." Aisha nodded, swallowing hard. But as they slipped through a side exit into the night, she couldn't help but glance back at the glowing hospital tower. Inside, the billionaire the world admired had whispered a secret only she now carried. That the man on the magazines, the man with stadiums and skyscrapers to his name, was her father. And in the crowd outside, someone's camera had already caught the silver locket glinting against her chest. The night air outside the hospital was thick with noise. Reporters jostled, microphones clattered, camera lights stabbed like flashbulbs in a storm. Dana's grip on Aisha's arm was firm as they slipped into a waiting sedan. Arielle was at the wheel, engine humming low. "Keep your head down," Dana ordered. "Don't give them a clean shot." Through the tinted glass, Aisha caught glimpses. Cardboard signs, cameras raised, voices shouting. She couldn't make out all the words, but one question pierced through the roar. Is she his daughter? Her pulse spiked. Had someone overheard in the hospital? Or had the locket, glinting under sterile lights, already told its own story? Arielle floored the accelerator, and the sedan slipped into Washington traffic. The noise faded, but the echo of that question stayed. Back at the hotel, Evelyn was pacing. She nearly collapsed with relief when Aisha walked in. "Baby, I told you not to go. Do you know what they're saying out there?" Aisha hesitated. Dana and Arielle exchanged glances but said nothing. "They're saying you're connected to him," Evelyn continued, her voice trembling. "Reporters are sniffing around. Some already called me at work." Aisha's throat tightened. She touched the locket, its silver oval catching the room's light. "They're not wrong." Her mother froze. "He told me," Aisha said quietly. "Sterling Vale. He said you and him. That he's my father." The words landed like stones. Evelyn's face paled. Her shoulders sagged as if a weight she'd carried for years had finally been named. "You weren't supposed to hear it like that," she whispered. "So it's true." Evelyn sat heavily on the edge of the bed, eyes glistening. "Yes, it's true, but it was complicated, Aisha. He was young, ambitious. When I told him I was pregnant, he panicked, said he couldn't risk scandal, not while he was building his empire. I walked away. I raised you myself. I wanted to protect you from his world, the greed, the spotlight, the wolves who circle money." Aisha's chest burned. "Protect me? Or keep me from him?" Her mother looked down, shame tightening her voice. "Both." The silence stretched. The hotel's hum filled the room. The air conditioner, the muffled traffic, the faraway murmur of a TV. Aisha felt her world tilt between two truths: the mother who had sacrificed everything to raise her, and the father who had chosen empire over family. "I should hate him," she said finally, her voice low, "for walking away, for letting you struggle while he built yachts he could burn. But when I looked at him, when he grabbed my locket, I didn't see power. I saw regret." Evelyn's eyes brimmed with tears. "Regret doesn't raise a child. Regret doesn't pay rent. Regret doesn't sit up all night when you're sick." "No," Aisha whispered, her throat thick. "You did all that. You." Her mother reached for her hand. Aisha let her hold it, but her gaze drifted to the window, where flashing red lights from a passing fire truck painted the glass. Down in the lobby, Dana and Arielle huddled. Dana's voice was clipped. "This is bigger than a family drama now. If the press gets wind of paternity, it will explode. Sterling Vale isn't just a man, he's an institution. Billions in assets, boards, investors. They'll rip her apart to discredit the story." Arielle nodded grimly. "We need to get ahead of it, control the narrative before someone else does." Dana's eyes flicked toward the elevator. "But the question is, does Aisha even want to be part of this narrative?" The next morning, the answer began to form on its own. Social media was ablaze. Clips of Aisha dragging Sterling Vale onto the skiff had racked up millions of views overnight. Commentators dissected every frame: her CPR compressions, the briefcase sliding into view, the billionaire whispering her name. But what caught fire fastest was the locket. Zoomed-in screenshots filled timelines. Why did he reach for her necklace? Look at his face. He recognizes her. Hashtags trended. #Yacht Rescue, #mystery, locket, #Vale daughter. By noon, morning shows were running split screens. Aisha on one side, a younger photo of Sterling Vale on the other. The resemblance once suggested was undeniable. At school in Newport, kids whispered in hallways. Teachers stumbled through lessons while phones buzzed. Aisha's classmates who'd barely noticed her last week now posted old selfies with her, tagging them, "Knew her before she was famous." Back in the hotel, Aisha scrolled through her phone, each headline heavier than the last. Hero Teen's locket sparks questions about Vale family. If true, this could upend a billionaire's legacy. Anonymous sources claim Vale hid daughter for years. She dropped the phone onto the bed, burying her face in her hands. "I didn't ask for this," she whispered. Evelyn touched her shoulder. "I know, baby, but sometimes the truth doesn't care what we ask." A knock at the door startled them. Dana opened it cautiously. A courier stood with an envelope, marked with Vale Systems' embossed crest. Inside was a single note, written in Sterling's neat, deliberate hand. "We need to meet. Tonight. The briefcase will explain everything." SV Aisha's pulse thudded in her ears. The briefcase, the secret he'd begged her to protect. She looked at her mother, whose eyes widened with a mixture of fear and resignation. Evelyn whispered, "If you go, nothing will ever be the same." Aisha clutched the note, the locket pressing cold against her skin. It isn't the same already. The hospital at night was a different world. The daytime chaos of reporters had thinned to a restless hush, the crowds pushed back by barricades and yawning security guards. Streetlights cast long beams across the parking lot, and the revolving door spun slower now, admitting only staff and the occasional family member carrying takeout containers for loved ones. Aisha stood on the sidewalk across the street, the courier's note folded in her pocket, her mother's warning echoing in her head. Dana and Arielle flanked her like sentinels. Evelyn hadn't come, she couldn't bear to, but her parting words clung to Aisha's chest. Nothing will ever be the same. Are you ready for this? Dana asked quietly. No, Aisha admitted. But I need to hear him. And I need to see what's in that case. Arielle scanned the street, nodding. Then let's move. Keep your hood up. They slipped through the side entrance, badges borrowed from a sympathetic nurse. The hallway smelled faintly of antiseptic and lemon polish. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Aisha's sneakers squeaked on the polished tiles as her heart pounded louder than her footsteps. Sterling's room was at the end of the hall, guarded by a single private security officer who nodded as Dana flashed her borrowed badge. Inside, the room was dim, blinds drawn against the glow of the city. Machines hummed softly. Sterling Vale sat upright in bed, pale but alert, a single lamp casting sharp lines across his face. On the tray beside him sat the aluminum briefcase. You came, he said, his voice hoarse but clear. Aisha lowered her hood. You didn't give me much choice. Sterling gestured to the chair by his bed. Sit, we don't have much time. The board is already circling. They'll try to bury this before morning. Aisha's gaze locked on the briefcase. What's in there? Sterling's hand hovered over it, fingers trembling slightly. Proof. Of everything I was too much of a coward to say out loud. He clicked the latches, the sound metallic and final. Slowly, he lifted the lid. Inside, neatly arranged folders lay stacked, each labeled in his precise handwriting. Beneath them rested envelopes sealed with wax, old photographs, and at the very bottom, a leather-bound notebook. He lifted the top folder and handed it to Aisha. These are letters I wrote to your mother. Dozens of them. I never sent them. They were apologies I didn't have the courage to deliver. Aisha flipped one open. The paper was dated nearly 2 decades ago. The words blurred in her vision. Evelyn, not a day passes that I don't think of you. I am building something monstrous, and I told myself I had to leave you behind to protect you. But what I protected was only myself. Her throat tightened. She never got these. She thought you just forgot her. Sterling's eyes glistened. I never forgot. I just ran. Dana leaned closer, scanning the contents. And the rest? Sterling pulled out the leather notebook. This is where it gets dangerous. Inside is a record of deals, board votes, secrets worth billions, and in between them, notes about you, about how I kept you hidden, how the board insisted I erase any scandal that might tarnish Vale systems. If this comes out, they'll call you a liar. They'll say you're a plant. They'll use every cent of their power to bury you. Aisha's stomach flipped. So why give it to me now? Because the fire changed everything. His eyes locked on hers. I should have died out there. You pulled me back. You gave me a second chance I didn't deserve, and I won't waste it hiding anymore. The words hung in the sterile air, heavy with consequence. Aisha touched the locket at her chest. All my life, I asked my mom about my dad. She said he was gone. And now you're here, saying you're him, handing me the receipts. Do you have any idea what this does to me? To her? To us? Sterling winced. I know, and I can't undo the years, but I can give you the truth. That's all I have left. A sudden knock rattled the door. Sterling's security detail leaned in, whispering urgently. Reporters somehow slipped the perimeter. We've got to move fast. Sterling shut the case and slid it toward Aisha. Take it. Hide it. Whatever happens next, this keeps you safe. If the board finds it, they'll twist everything. But in your hands, it's leverage. It's proof. Aisha stared at the case, its cold metal reflecting the lamp. The weight of it felt like more than steel. It was years of secrets, a legacy of silence, and the spark of a storm. Reluctantly, she pulled it into her lap. As Dana guided her toward the door, Sterling's voice followed, hoarse but fierce. They'll come for you, Aisha, not because of who you are, but because of who I wasn't. Don't let them break you. Aisha paused at the threshold. You already did that once. Sterling's face faltered, and for the first time, the billionaire looked small. She turned and left, the briefcase clutched tight. Outside, the reporters had gathered again, shouting questions that bled together. Is she the daughter? What's in the case? Why did he call her Evelyn? Camera flashes cut across the night as Dana hustled her into the car. Aisha held the case tight to her chest, her heart hammering. She didn't know yet if it was a shield or a bomb. But she knew one thing for certain. The fire she had pulled him from wasn't finished. It had only just begun to spread. By sunrise, the briefcase had become the most searched phrase in America. News anchors leaned forward at glossy desks, repeating the same grainy clip. The aluminum case sliding across the rescue skiff, caught in shaky phone footage, its lock glinting under the smoke. Side by side with that image were zoomed-in shots of Aisha, her hands on Sterling Vale's chest, the silver locket at her throat. "What's in the case?" one headline blared. "Who is the mystery girl with the necklace?" asked another. Talk shows speculated wildly. Some insisted it contained business secrets, others whispered it was hush money, evidence of corruption. On social media, hashtags exploded. Hashtag Vale case, hashtag Yacht fire, hashtag Who is Aisha? Aisha sat cross-legged on the hotel bed, her phone buzzing non-stop, her stomach twisting with every new headline. She hadn't slept. The case sat on the floor beside her, its silver sides reflecting the dim morning light. "They're tearing me apart online," she whispered. "Half the comments call me a hero, half call me a fraud." Evelyn perched on the edge of the bed, her face drawn. "Baby, let them talk. People talk no matter what. The truth will outlast their noise." Aisha's eyes darted to the case. Will it, though? Because whatever's in there could change everything. For him, for us. Down the hall, Dana and Arielle huddled with laptops open, conference calls buzzing. Dana's voice was sharp. "Vale Systems stock is already dropping. Investors want answers. The board is meeting today, closed session. If they catch wind of the briefcase, they'll spin it as forgery, maybe even accuse her of theft." Arielle frowned. "And Sterling? He's barely out of ICU. He can't defend himself, which means she's the target now." They both glanced at the closed hotel door, behind which Aisha sat with her mother. "She's just a teenager," Arielle muttered, "and they're about to treat her like an enemy corporation." At that same moment, miles away in Vale Systems' gleaming headquarters, the boardroom seethed. Men and women in tailored suits leaned over polished oak, their voices sharp as knives. A newsfeed played on the big screen. Aisha on the skiff, Sterling being carried out on a stretcher. "This girl cannot become the face of our brand's collapse," one director snapped. "She's already a face," another countered. "And if the rumors are true, if she is his daughter, then this is more than PR, this is succession." The room buzzed. Succession, legacy, words with billions attached. At the head of the table, interim chair Malcolm Price adjusted his tie. "We move fast. Vale's silence is our chance. Discredit the girl. Paint her as an opportunist. Get ahead of the narrative before it defines us." Back in the hotel, Aisha scrolled through feeds until her eyes blurred. She froze when she saw her own face on a split screen beside Sterling Vale's under the caption, "Like father, like daughter?" Her breath caught. "They know." Evelyn leaned over, reading it too. She pressed her lips tight, guilt shadowing her eyes. "I'm sorry, baby. I thought hiding you would keep you safe." Aisha shook her head, tears burning. "Safe from what? From him? Or from this?" She gestured at the phone, the swarm of headlines, the speculation consuming her name. Her mother reached for her hand, but Aisha pulled away, pressing her palms to her eyes. "I never asked for this." Later that afternoon, Dana gathered them all in the hotel lounge. She set her laptop down, face grim. "The board is moving. They're briefing select reporters off the record, saying you staged the rescue for clout, that the locket is fake, that the briefcase was planted." Aisha's stomach dropped. "Planted? I dragged it out of a burning yacht." "They don't care," Dana said. "They're fighting for billions. And to them, you're not a girl. You're a threat." Arielle added, "Which means we need a counter-strategy. If you stay silent, they'll own the story. But if you speak, if you show proof, they can't bury it." All eyes turned to the silver case at Aisha's feet. She bent down, fingers brushing its cold surface. For a moment, the weight of it made her hesitate. Inside were letters, photographs, confessions, proof. But once opened, once revealed, there would be no going back. I don't even know if I want his name, she whispered. All my life I was just Aisha Moore. Now suddenly I'm maybe someone else. Someone they'll never let me be without tearing me apart first. Evelyn's voice trembled. Baby, you are Aisha Moore. That won't change no matter what's in there, but you deserve to know the truth, and you deserve to decide what to do with it. As the sun set, they gathered in the hotel room. The case sat on the table between them, its locks gleaming. Aisha inhaled, steadying herself. Okay, she said softly. Let's open it. Dana clicked the latches, the lid creaked. Inside lay the folders, the wax-sealed envelopes, the leather notebook. Aisha pulled one envelope free, breaking the seal with trembling fingers. The letter inside was short, handwritten. If you're reading this, it means I failed to keep my silence. To my daughter, forgive me. I chose empire over family, and I would undo it all if I could. The truth is yours now. Use it carefully. SV. Aisha's breath hitched. Evelyn covered her face, tears streaming. And at that exact moment, Dana's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, her eyes widening. They know, she whispered. A leak just hit the wires. The world already knows you're his daughter. Aisha's chest clenched. Her hands tightened around the letter until it crumpled. It was no longer a secret. It was a storm. The leak hit harder than any wave Aisha had ever fought in open water. By dawn, every major outlet carried the same headline, phrased a dozen different ways, but screaming the same truth. Sterling Vale has a secret daughter. Yacht hero identified as heir to billionaire. From lifeguard to legacy, the girl with the locket. On television, slick commentators debated her identity as if she were a stock. Some spoke warmly of her bravery. Others sneered about scandal and opportunism. Is this just another case of someone claiming connection for attention? One pundit said. We haven't seen definitive proof yet. Proof? Another snapped. He reached for her locket in the moment he nearly died. You can't stage instinct like that. Aisha sat at the hotel table, pale, her phone vibrating constantly with calls, messages, and threats she didn't dare read. The silver case lay open beside her, documents spilling like a dam finally broken. Letters, photographs, receipts, proof enough to silence skeptics. But proof also meant exposure. Evelyn hovered nearby, wringing her hands. Baby, maybe it's time to just leave. We could disappear for a while. Let the noise die down. Dana shook her head firmly. Disappear? That's exactly what the board wants. They'll paint her absence as guilt. The only way through this is forward. Arielle tapped her laptop, scrolling through fresh reports. Vale Systems just issued a statement. Listen to this. She read aloud. Vale Systems acknowledges ongoing rumors regarding Mr. Sterling Vale's personal life. At this time, the company has no comment, but we ask the public to respect the privacy of those involved. Dana snorted. That's not a denial, that's a stall. They're buying time to figure out how to crush her. Aisha buried her face in her hands. I don't want to be crushed. I don't want to be anyone's scandal. I just wanted to swim, to breathe, to live my life. Evelyn pulled her close. You are your life, Aisha. Not theirs. Not his. Yours. But Aisha pulled back, eyes blazing through tears. Then why does it feel like everyone else is deciding who I am? Meanwhile, inside Vale Systems headquarters, the boardroom was a battlefield. Malcolm Price slammed his palm on the table. This leak has already cost us 3% on the market. If investors believe Sterling hid an heir, especially one outside the family trust, we're looking at lawsuits, shareholder revolts, maybe even criminal inquiries. We must cut ties now. A woman across the table raised a brow. Cut ties with a teenage girl? She saved his life. Public opinion is tilting toward her. We might be smarter to embrace it. Malcolm leaned forward, voice sharp. You want to hand billions to a girl who grew up above a laundromat? She'll sink us before she learns to swim. The room murmured. Words like inheritance, succession, and image crisis flew like daggers. And all the while, Sterling Vale lay in a hospital bed, too weak to attend, while the empire he'd built argued over the daughter he'd abandoned. Back at the hotel, the street outside had transformed into a circus. News vans lined the curb. Paparazzi crouched behind planters, lenses pointed at the lobby. Crowds gathered with signs, some cheering, some jeering. Aisha peeked through the blinds, heart racing. They're everywhere. Dana frowned. Then it's time to control the story. We set up an interview, one trusted outlet. You tell your version before they twist it into theirs. Evelyn paled. She's 17. She shouldn't have to go on TV and defend her existence. Aisha's voice shook, but she surprised them both. Maybe I should. If I stay silent, they'll invent my story anyway. At least this way I can speak for myself. That night, Dana arranged for a quiet sit-down with a respected journalist, someone known for fairness rather than theatrics. They met in a small studio, the lights soft, the room hushed. The interviewer leaned in gently. Aisha, the world watched you save a man's life. Now it watches you become part of his. How are you feeling? Her throat tightened, but she forced the words steady. Confused, angry, scared, but also relieved. Because for once, the questions I've been asking my whole life, who he was, why he left, they finally have answers. Ugly answers, but answers. And what about the briefcase? The journalist asked carefully. Aisha hesitated, then lifted the leather notebook Sterling had left. She didn't open it, just let the cameras see it. This is proof. Letters, records, all of it. I didn't ask for any of this, but I won't hide it. Not anymore. The interview aired live. Within minutes, clips spread across social media. Her honesty, her trembling voice, the locket at her throat, people responded. She's just a kid, one viewer wrote, and she's handling this with more grace than the entire board. Another posted, if she wanted fame, she'd have sold the case by now. She's telling the truth. But not everyone was sympathetic. She's after his money. She's making it up. Where's the DNA test? The noise rose, clashing louder than waves. Back at the hotel, Aisha sat exhausted, her head on her mother's shoulder. Did I do the right thing? She whispered. Evelyn kissed her hair. You did the only thing you could. You told your truth. That's always right. But Dana stood by the window, arms crossed. You won today, but the board won't stop. They'll dig, they'll smear, they'll fight harder, and sooner or later, they'll come for that briefcase. Aisha's gaze dropped to the silver case beside her bed, its lock gleaming in the lamplight. She felt its weight pressing on her chest, heavier than before. For better or worse, the fire had spread, and she was standing at its center. The next morning, the hotel television blared with a Vale Systems press conference. The company's interim chair, Malcolm Price, stood at a podium draped in the company's blue and silver banner. Cameras flashed as his voice filled every major network. Vale Systems would like to address recent rumors surrounding Mr. Sterling Vale and alleged family ties. These claims are unfounded and damaging. We caution the public not to be misled by opportunistic narratives. The word opportunistic sliced through Aisha like glass. She sat on the hotel couch, hugging a pillow to her chest as Malcolm continued. While we respect the bravery of the young woman involved in the yacht rescue, it is irresponsible to conflate her actions with corporate legacy. Vale Systems will not tolerate misinformation that threatens shareholder value. Reporters shouted questions, but he waved them off. The feed cut to commentary almost instantly, analysts dissecting his tone. Dana muted the screen, her jaw tight. They just declared war. Aisha stared at the blank TV, her stomach twisting. He called me opportunistic. Like I staged the whole thing. Evelyn reached over, squeezing her daughter's hand. Baby, that's all they have. Lies. They don't know you. But the world doesn't know me either, Aisha whispered. All they see is a headline and a necklace. Later that day, her phone buzzed relentlessly. Texts from classmates she hadn't heard from in months poured in. Is it true? Are you rich now? You better not forget us when you're famous. So this whole time, you were keeping secrets? Even her teachers emailed, suggesting she take a leave of absence until things settle. By lunch, her social media feeds were flooded with doctored memes. Aisha's face pasted onto luxury ads, captions mocking her as "Daddy's little billionaire." Others were harsher, anonymous comments tearing into her race, her background, her worth. She threw the phone onto the bed, her hands trembling. They're shredding me alive. Evelyn pulled her close. Let them talk, Aisha. Their words don't define you. But in the quiet of her chest, Aisha wasn't sure she believed that. Meanwhile, in the hospital, Sterling Vale insisted on holding his own press call. His doctors objected, but he waved them off, wheeled himself into a small conference room with cameras already waiting. He looked pale, his suit loose across his shoulders, but his voice carried the authority of decades at the helm of an empire. "There has been much speculation," he began, pausing to cough lightly. "Let me speak plainly. A young woman saved my life during the fire aboard my yacht. Her name is Aisha Moore, and yes, she is my daughter." The room erupted in gasps and camera flashes. Sterling raised a hand, steady. "I failed her and her mother years ago. My silence was selfish, but her courage, her calm, her strength in the face of danger, these are qualities no stock price, no board vote can measure. If there is to be a legacy attached to my name, let it include her." The clip spread like wildfire, reaching every feed within minutes. News anchors stammered over the revelation. Analysts argued whether it was heartfelt or strategic. At the hotel, Aisha watched, frozen. "He said it," she whispered. "He actually said it." Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. She gripped her daughter's shoulders. "He finally admitted it. After all these years." Dana exhaled sharply. "This changes everything. The board can't discredit you without discrediting him now. But don't be fooled. They'll come harder. Billions are at stake." Sure enough, Vale Systems struck back within hours. A new statement from Malcolm Price hit the wires. "While we respect Mr. Vale's personal reflections, his health is compromised and his judgment may be clouded. The company affirms there is no official record of a daughter within the Vale estate. We will cooperate fully with any legal review to ensure clarity." The implication was clear. Sterling's word couldn't be trusted. Aisha slammed the laptop shut. "They're saying he's too sick to tell the truth, that I'm a lie." Dana's voice was calm but fierce. "Which means we have to show the proof, the letters, the notebook. They're your shield." Evelyn shook her head. "But those documents will tear open more than just the truth. They'll drag every dirty deal, every hidden vote into daylight. The world will see his sins as much as his confession." Aisha looked between them, heart pounding. The silver briefcase sat on the table like a live grenade. "Maybe that's the point," she said softly. "Maybe the truth isn't just about me. Maybe it's about everything he hid." That night, protesters gathered outside Vale Systems headquarters. Some carried candles with Aisha's name scrawled on signs. "She saved him. Now save her." Others shouted accusations of fraud, demanding DNA tests. Inside the hotel, Aisha sat at her desk, the leather notebook open. The pages were filled with her father's precise handwriting, boardroom secrets, confessions, deals struck in shadows. Between them, scattered notes about Evelyn, about the baby he'd never met, about her. Her chest tightened. This wasn't just proof of paternity, it was evidence that could topple an empire. As she closed the book, her phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't classmates or reporters. It was a new number, the message short and sharp. "We know you have the case. Give it up before it destroys you." MP Aisha stared at the screen, her heart hammering. The board knew, and they weren't asking nicely. The message glared from Aisha's phone screen like a warning flare over the water. "We know you have the case. Give it up before it destroys you." MP. She read it again and again, her pulse thundering in her ears. MP, there was no doubt who it was. Malcolm Price, the interim chair of Vale Systems. The man whose face filled boardrooms, who stood behind podiums and declared her a fraud, was now sending threats in the shadows. Dana snatched the phone from her hands, scanning the text. Her lips pressed into a hard line. "So they've decided intimidation is easier than spin." Evelyn's face blanched. "He's threatening my daughter. That's criminal." "Criminals in suits don't get caught easily," Dana muttered. "They'll bury this if we let them." Aisha's throat tightened. "What does he mean by destroy you? What could be worse than what they're already doing?" Dana met her eyes. "They'll dig through your life, Aisha. Every grade, every mistake, every rumor. They'll twist you into whatever villain they need, and they'll never stop until you hand them that case." The silver briefcase sat on the hotel desk, gleaming under the lamplight. Its presence felt heavier than steel, like a weight chained to her chest. Inside were letters, photographs, and secrets powerful enough to topple men who sat at the top of skyscrapers. Aisha stared at it, heart pounding. "If it's that dangerous, maybe I should give it up." Evelyn's head snapped toward her. "No, baby, that case isn't just their secrets, it's your truth. If you hand it over, they'll erase you, erase everything." "But keeping it could destroy me," Aisha whispered. That night, she couldn't sleep. She sat by the window, the city lights flickering like restless stars. Every headline replayed in her mind. Vale's secret daughter? Fraud or heiress? The locket mystery. She imagined her classmates reading them, imagined strangers dissecting her face, her voice, her worth. In the silence, her phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. This is your last chance. Meet us tomorrow. Leave the case. Walk away clean. She dropped the phone onto the bed, her hands trembling. She wanted to believe it. Walk away clean, pretend none of this had ever happened. But deep down, she knew better. There was no walking away from fire once it had spread. At dawn, Dana and Arielle found her still awake, eyes hollow. They texted again, she admitted, showing them the screen. Dana cursed under her breath. They're escalating, which means we have two choices. Go to the police or go public. Public? Aisha asked. Release the documents, Dana said. If everyone sees what's in that case, the board can't use it against you anymore. Arielle nodded. Sunlight is the best shield. They can smear you, but they can't unwrite their own signatures. Evelyn stepped into the room, arms crossed. And what about Sterling? Those documents don't just prove he's her father. They expose every shady deal he made. It'll destroy him too. Aisha swallowed hard. The thought twisted her gut. The man who had abandoned her, who had confessed with tears and shame, might lose everything if she opened that case. Did he deserve ruin or redemption? Later that morning, the world outside grew louder. Crowds filled the street beneath the hotel, chanting. Some held signs, "We believe Aisha." Others jeered, "Prove it or quit." News vans lined the block, their satellite dishes pointed skyward. From the window, Aisha could see her name glowing on posters, her face printed on cardboard. She'd gone from anonymous lifeguard to symbol in a matter of days, and now every side wanted her to choose, silence or revelation. Her phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't a threat, it was a video. Sterling Vale, pale and weary, speaking from his hospital bed. My daughter is not a liar. The world may question her, but I will not. If my empire falls because of truth, then so be it. I built it on silence. She deserves better. Aisha's chest clenched. For once, he sounded less like a titan of business and more like a father. That evening, Dana set the briefcase on the table between them all. She looked at Aisha, her voice steady. This isn't about Sterling anymore, or the board. It's about you. If you open this, you'll unleash a storm. But it will be your storm. Your truth. No one else's. The room was silent. Evelyn's eyes shone with worry. Arielle folded her arms, waiting. Finally, Aisha reached out, fingers resting on the cold steel. I've lived my whole life not knowing who I was supposed to be, she said softly. Now the whole world wants to tell me. But maybe it's time I told them. Her thumb brushed the lock. The sound of the click seemed to echo louder than thunder. Down in the lobby, a hotel clerk watched as two men in suits lingered near the entrance, eyes sharp, movements stiff. He'd seen them before, always outside when news broke. Tonight, they weren't holding cameras. They were watching doors. And upstairs, as Aisha opened the first envelope, reading the words her father had written years ago, she didn't know yet that forces were already moving against her. The board hadn't just threatened her, they were coming. The men in suits didn't knock. They lingered in the hotel lobby long enough to draw whispers from the staff, then disappeared into the night. But by morning, their presence was felt upstairs. Dana's phone lit up with alerts from her contacts. 2 unmarked sedans parked outside all night. Same plates Vale Systems uses for its corporate security. She slid the phone onto the table where the silver briefcase still sat. They're not just bluffing anymore. They're here. Evelyn's face went pale. Here? Watching my daughter like she's a criminal? Arielle leaned against the window, peering through the blinds at the street below. Protesters waved signs, cameras rolled, but between the chaos sat the sedans, silent, waiting. They're not going away until they get that case. Aisha sat at the desk, the leather notebook open in front of her. Her hands trembled as she traced the lines of her father's handwriting. Board vote, off-books contract, silence Evelyn. Words that felt like daggers. She closed the book abruptly, pushing it away. I can't live like this. Every time I look outside, I feel like I'm prey. Dana's voice was sharp but calm. That's what they want. Fear. But if you give in, if you hand them that case, they win, and you disappear. Later that day, the pressure boiled over. At school, students crowded her locker, cell phones up, recording. Say something, Aisha, one boy taunted. Are you gonna buy us all yachts now? Another girl shoved a tabloid in her face, her picture plastered across the cover. Vale's secret daughter, teen heiress, or teenage hoax. I don't want your money, Aisha snapped, slamming the locker shut. I just want my life back. But laughter followed her down the hall, the sound harsher than any wave she'd ever faced. By the time she made it to class, a teacher pulled her aside. Maybe it's best you take some time away, dear. The environment isn't stable. Stable. As if her existence were an earthquake. She left early, head down, cameras flashing as she slipped into Dana's waiting car. Back at the hotel, Evelyn held her tight. Baby, I can't keep watching them tear you apart. You're only 17. You deserve peace, not this. But Aisha's voice, though shaking, was resolute. Peace doesn't come by hiding. If I run, they'll write my story for me. If I speak, at least it's mine. Dana nodded approvingly. Then we make a move. A press conference. Public. Broad daylight. You open the case, reveal the letters, the notebook. You end the guessing game. Evelyn gasped. No! That'll expose everything. Every dirty deal, every skeleton in his closet, it'll destroy him. Aisha met her mother's eyes. Maybe it should. He built an empire on silence, Mom. And silence is what kept me fatherless. Maybe truth is the only way forward. That evening, Sterling Vale called from the hospital. His voice was weaker, but his words carried weight. Aisha, don't let them scare you. That notebook, you're holding the soul of Vale Systems. They'll come at you with money, with power, with lies. But don't let them take it. Whatever happens, don't give them silence again. Her throat tightened. But if I open it, won't it ruin you? He chuckled bitterly. Maybe I deserve ruin, but you don't. If truth protects you, then truth must come out. Let me bear the shame. Not you. The line clicked dead, leaving her with the echo of a man who finally sounded like a father. If only too late. By midnight, the threats sharpened. An envelope slid under the hotel door, unmarked. Dana bent to pick it up, slipping on gloves before opening. Inside was a single photograph. Aisha leaving school, circled in red. At the bottom, block letters spelled, ticking clock. Evelyn covered her mouth, her body shaking. They're watching her every move. This isn't just intimidation, it's a warning. Aisha stared at the photo, fury rising through the fear. They think I'll fold, that I'll stay quiet like my mom did, like he did, but I won't. Dana's eyes narrowed. Then tomorrow, we take the fight to them. The next morning, a podium was set on the steps of the hotel. Reporters swarmed, cameras poised. Aisha stood in a navy jacket too big for her shoulders, her hair braided neatly by Evelyn's trembling hands. The silver locket hung visible against her collar. She gripped the briefcase handle. Her palms were slick, but her voice, when she stepped to the microphone, was steady. My name is Aisha Moore. I'm 17 years old. I didn't ask for this attention. I didn't ask for my name to be dragged through the news. But I won't let lies write my story. This, she lifted the briefcase onto the podium with a heavy thud, is the truth. Gasps rippled. Flashbulbs exploded. She clicked the latches, the metallic snap echoing across the crowd. Inside lay the letters, the photos, the notebook. She pulled one page free, holding it high. This is my father's handwriting. His words, his silence, his confession. The world deserves to see what silence built, and what it cost. The crowd erupted, cameras zooming. Somewhere across town, in a gleaming boardroom, Malcolm Price's glass of water cracked in his fist. The instant Aisha lifted the page to the cameras, the air on the hotel steps shifted. Reporters shouted questions all at once, microphones thrust like spears. What do the documents prove? Are you claiming legal heirship? Did Sterling Vale authorize this? Flashes blinded her, but she held the letter high, her voice cutting through the chaos. These are my father's words. He wrote them years ago, but never sent them. In them, he admits leaving my mother, admits leaving me, and he admits building Vale Systems on silence. If the board wants to call me a liar, let them explain this. She lowered the page, her hands trembling, but the crowd was already roaring. Some clapped, others jeered. The line between support and suspicion had never felt sharper. By evening, the footage looped across every channel. Clips of her steady voice played beside talking heads debating her every syllable. One anchor leaned forward, eyes shining. We just watched a teenager challenge one of the most powerful corporations in America with nothing but a briefcase and her truth. Another smirked. Or we watched a minor exploited by sensational media. Where's the DNA test? Where's the proof beyond handwritten notes? Online, hashtag surged. #believe Aisha, #veil truth, #briefcase bombshell. Her face was everywhere. On magazine mock-ups, protest signs, memes. Some painted her as a hero, others twisted her into a schemer. Back in the hotel, the mood was heavy. Dana paced the suite, phone pressed to her ear. Yes, we've seen the coverage. Yes, she's safe for now. No, she's not backing down. She hung up, rubbing her temples. The board is in full panic. They're filing injunctions trying to block the documents from being released, but the genie's out of the bottle. Arielle scrolled her laptop, frowning. And the threats are worse. They're calling her unstable, saying she forged the letters. Some outlets are publishing old photos, twisting them into stories about her behavior. It's smear campaign 101. Evelyn sat on the bed, clutching Aisha's hand. They can say what they want. I know who she is. Aisha, exhausted, stared at the case. I thought showing the truth would make things clearer, but it just made the noise louder. Dana crouched in front of her. That's how power fights back. They drown you in noise until people stop listening. The question is, can you hold steady long enough for the truth to cut through? Meanwhile, at Vale Systems headquarters, the boardroom was chaos. Malcolm Price slammed his hand on the table. She humiliated us on live television. Investors are spooked. Stock dropped another 5 points this afternoon. If we don't crush her narrative by morning, we lose control completely. One director leaned back, lips pursed. Maybe we're going about this wrong. The public loves her bravery. Fighting her outright makes us look like villains. Malcolm's eyes narrowed. She is a villain. She's threatening decades of work. Or, another board member said quietly, she's the heir Sterling never named. And if she has that briefcase, she might already hold more legitimacy than we do. The silence that followed was heavier than any argument. For the first time, doubt seeped into the room. In his hospital bed, Sterling watched the coverage. He winced at the sight of his daughter under the barrage of cameras, but pride flickered in his eyes. She stood taller than I ever did, he whispered to himself. His hand rested on his chest, where the IV lines tugged, his breath shallow but steady. They can't bury her now. That night, crowds gathered outside Vale Systems offices. Protesters chanted, candles in hand, truth matters, truth matters. Signs waved, we stand with Aisha, while counter-protesters shouted accusations of fraud. Police erected barriers, but the noise carried into the glass towers above. From the hotel window, Aisha watched the footage stream live. Her name was now a chant on strangers' lips, her face a symbol she hadn't asked to be. I don't know if I can handle this, she admitted, voice cracking. Evelyn hugged her from behind. Baby, you've already handled more than most adults could. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be you. Aisha leaned into her mother's embrace, her eyes drifting to the briefcase on the desk. But being me might bring everything down. Then let it fall, Evelyn said softly. If the truth brings it down, maybe it should. Near midnight, Dana's phone buzzed. She read the message, her face tightening. They've moved past threats, she said grimly. Vale Systems just filed for an emergency court order to seize the briefcase. Arielle's eyes widened. On what grounds? Corporate property, Dana spat. They're claiming anything Sterling wrote about the company belongs to the company. If a judge agrees, we lose it all. Aisha felt her chest tighten. So tomorrow they could take everything? The letters, the notebook, the proof? Dana nodded. Unless we move first. She set a thick envelope on the table. I called in a favor. A major paper is ready to publish excerpts. If we hand them a sample tonight, it's protected. Even if the company seizes the case, the truth will already be out. Aisha stared at the envelope. It was another choice, another cliff edge. Once we do this, Dana warned, there's no turning back. You'll be tied to this forever. No more normal life. No more going back to who you were before the fire. Silence filled the room. Evelyn reached for her daughter's hand. Arielle watched quietly, the weight of the world pressed down. Finally, Aisha drew a breath, steady and strong. Then let's do it. Let them see everything. Dana slid the envelope across the table. Aisha placed the first letter inside, her father's confession. As the seal pressed shut, she felt a shift inside her chest. Fear was still there, but so was resolve. The storm had broken, but she wasn't running anymore. The morning paper hit newsstands like a thunderclap. On the front page, splashed across bold type, were Sterling Vale's words written years earlier. "I chose empire over family. My silence was cowardice, not protection. My daughter deserves better than my name, but she deserves the truth." Beside the text ran a grainy photo of Aisha clutching the locket, her eyes weary but unbroken. The headline screamed, "Vale heir revealed. Letters confirm hidden daughter." By noon, the article had circled the globe. Investors panicked, stock markets trembled, and Vale Systems' phone lines lit up with angry shareholders demanding answers. Crowds outside corporate headquarters grew louder, candles and signs battling against jeers of fraud, but the board didn't sit idle. By afternoon, Vale Systems filed a lawsuit in federal court. The claim was stark: unauthorized possession of corporate property, injunction requested for immediate seizure of confidential materials. Aisha read the words aloud from Dana's laptop, her hands shaking. "They're suing me? Me? I'm 17. Evelyn's face crumpled with outrage. "They're bullying a child to save their empire. This is monstrous." Dana's jaw clenched. "It's not about truth anymore. It's about power. And they're testing if you have the strength to stand against it." The hotel became a war room. Lawyers arrived, dropping thick binders on the table. "The company will argue the letters and notebook belong to them because they reference business matters," one attorney explained. "But we'll argue they're personal. Family correspondence, confessions. That case is more about a father and daughter than a corporation." Aisha sat quietly as adults argued strategy around her. She felt small, like a pawn on a chessboard too big to see the edges of. But when Dana caught her gaze, she shook her head. "No, you're not a pawn. You're the queen. They're moving against you because they know you're the strongest piece right now." The first hearing came quickly. Within 48 hours, Aisha found herself standing in a towering courthouse, marble columns stretching skyward. Protesters lined the steps outside, cameras flashing as she walked in, the locket shining against her jacket. Inside the courtroom, Malcolm Price sat with Vale Systems attorneys, his sharp eyes flicking toward her like daggers. Across the aisle, Dana squeezed her shoulder. "Stand tall. Don't let him see you flinch." The judge, an older woman with silver hair and a voice like gravel, called the session to order. Vale Systems attorney rose first. "Your Honor, the documents in Ms. Moore's possession are corporate property. They contain board votes, contracts, financial information vital to shareholder interests. Allowing a teenager to control such materials threatens not only Vale Systems, but the stability of markets themselves." The words hung heavy. Reporters scribbled furiously. Then Dana rose. "Your Honor, the briefcase is not merely corporate records. It contains deeply personal letters from Sterling Vale to his daughter, admissions of paternity, apologies for abandonment. To strip her of these is to strip her of her truth, her history, her identity. This is not about protecting shareholders, it's about silencing a child who dared to speak." The courtroom buzzed. The judge banged her gavel for order. Through it all, Aisha sat rigid, her heart pounding. She wanted to stand up, to shout that she wasn't a thief, that she was just a girl who had saved her father's life and now faced the wrath of his empire. But Dana had warned her, silence is sometimes stronger than noise. When the hearing ended, the judge announced she would review the filings before ruling on the injunction. "Until then, the materials will remain sealed with the court," gasps echoed. Bailiffs moved forward, carrying the silver briefcase out of the room like evidence. Aisha's chest constricted as it left her hands. The weight she'd carried for days was gone, but instead of relief, she felt stripped, exposed. Outside the courthouse, microphones swarmed. "Aisha, do you think you'll lose the case? Did you forge the letters? Are you after Vale's fortune?" Dana pulled her through the crush, Evelyn shielding her with trembling arms. But one question broke through the noise. "Do you regret speaking out?" Aisha froze. For a moment, fear clawed her throat, but then she turned, eyes steady on the cameras. "No," she said firmly, "I regret that silence lasted this long. Whatever happens, I won't go back to silence." The crowd roared. Some cheered, others scoffed. But the words were out, impossible to erase. That night, back at the hotel, Aisha curled up in bed, drained. Evelyn stroked her hair gently. "Baby, you were so brave today." Aisha whispered, "Bravery feels like being torn apart." Her mother kissed her forehead. "Bravery is being torn apart and standing anyway." At Vale Systems headquarters, Malcolm Price poured himself a drink, smirking at the footage of the briefcase being carried from court. She thought she could win, but tomorrow the judge will side with us, and then the girl will be nothing but a footnote. But in his hospital room, Sterling Vale watched the same footage with tears in his eyes. Not nothing, he murmured. She's already more than I ever was. As Aisha drifted to sleep, her phone buzzed again. Another unknown number, another short message. They can take the case, but they can't take your voice. Don't forget that. SV. She clutched the locket, eyes closing. For the first time, she believed it. The storm wasn't over, but maybe, just maybe, she was strong enough to stand in it. The courthouse was a fortress the morning of the ruling. Protesters pressed against barricades, their voices echoing up the marble steps. Signs clashed in the air. We stand with Aisha on one side, fraud heiress on the other. The cameras rolled non-stop, waiting for the gavel to decide. Inside, the courtroom was tense. Aisha sat at the defense table between Dana and Evelyn. The silver briefcase now rested at the judge's bench, sealed with red tape like a prisoner awaiting judgment. The judge adjusted her glasses, her face unreadable. After reviewing arguments from both sides, I find myself faced with two truths. One corporate, one personal. Vale. Systems claims these documents are property of the company, tied to board deliberations and contracts. Ms. Moore claims they are private, containing admissions of paternity and personal letters. Aisha held her breath, nails digging into her palms. The judge continued, the court recognizes the corporate interest, but it also recognizes the fundamental human right to identity. Therefore, the ruling is as follows. Business-related documents shall remain sealed pending further review. However, all personal correspondence, letters, photographs, and any writings addressed to Ms. Moore shall be returned to her possession immediately. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Reporters scribbled furiously. Dana squeezed Aisha's hand under the table, whispering, "We won half the battle." Malcolm Price's face flushed crimson. He leaned toward his attorneys, hissing, "This isn't over." Outside, microphones swarmed again. "Aisha, how do you feel about the ruling? Will you pursue DNA testing? Do you want a share of Vale's fortune?" Aisha paused on the steps, the returned envelope of letters clutched in her hand. Her voice trembled but held steady. "I don't care about money. I care about truth. And today, part of that truth came back to me." "That's enough for now." The crowd roared, some cheering, some jeering. Cameras captured the moment, her locket glinting like a symbol in the morning sun. Back at the hotel, relief mixed with exhaustion. Evelyn kissed her daughter's forehead. "You stood tall, baby. I've never been prouder." But Aisha sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the letters. Half the case is still sealed. The ugliest secrets, the ones about the company, they're still buried. Dana crossed her arms. "For now, the judge carved out a compromise, but pressure will build. Public opinion doesn't stay quiet. The board can't hide forever." Arielle added, "And neither can you. The court of law gave you letters, but the court of public opinion is still raging. You're not just fighting them in here, you're fighting them out there." Aisha swallowed hard. "Then maybe it's time I stop letting everyone else speak for me." That night she opened one of the returned envelopes. Inside was a letter dated the year she was born. "Evelyn, if you ever give this to her, tell her I am sorry. Sorry for being too weak to choose her over headlines. Sorry for building towers while she lived without a father. Tell her I love her, though I never earned the right to say it." Tears blurred the ink. Aisha pressed the paper to her chest. For the first time, she felt the weight of her father's regret, not as a billionaire scandal, but as a man's failure. Meanwhile, Vale Systems scrambled. In the boardroom, Malcolm Price raged. "We can't let her keep framing the narrative. The girl's already turned into a martyr. If this continues, shareholders will start demanding she be brought into the fold." One director sighed. "And if Sterling names her formally, we have no choice. She becomes the heir." Price slammed his fist. "Then we stop him before he can." The words chilled the room. Everyone knew what he meant. Sterling's health was fading. If the old man didn't live long enough to make his daughter official, the board could bury her again. At the hospital, Sterling Vale sat propped up in bed, watching the news replay his daughter's words. His nurse adjusted his IV, shaking her head. "You should be resting, sir." Sterling's lips curled faintly. "Rest can wait. My daughter is standing taller than I ever did. I have to do the same." He picked up a pen, scrawling shaky lines on a document his lawyers had left earlier. A last will and testament. With every word, he tried to etch Aisha's name into permanence. Back at the hotel, Aisha paced. Her phone buzzed non-stop. Interview requests, hate messages, offers of support. She ignored them all, clutching another letter in her hand. "Mom," she whispered, "I don't know if I'm strong enough for this. Every step forward just makes the fight harder." Evelyn cupped her face gently. "Strength isn't about being unbreakable, Aisha. It's about breaking and still choosing to stand back up." Aisha nodded slowly. "Then I'll stand. Not just for me, for him too. Even if he didn't stand for me when I needed him." As midnight fell, Dana received a call. Her face went pale as she listened. "What is it?" Aisha asked. Dana lowered the phone. "Sterling collapsed at the hospital. They're rushing him into intensive care." The room froze. Evelyn clutched her daughter's hand. "Baby, whatever happens, you need to be ready. The next hours could change everything." Aisha's heart pounded. She clutched the locket, whispering to herself, "Please, not yet. Not before I know who he really is." The call came just after midnight. Sterling Vale had collapsed, his condition critical. By the time Aisha, Evelyn, Dana, and Arielle reached the hospital, the building was buzzing with tension. Security guards pushed reporters back, doctors whispered in corners, and the air smelled of both antiseptic and fear. Aisha's sneakers squeaked on the polished floor as she rushed to the ICU wing. Every step felt like a countdown. A nurse met them at the double doors, her expression grave. "Mr. Vale suffered a cardiac event. We stabilized him, but he's weak. He asked for his daughter." Aisha froze. "Me?" The nurse nodded. "Yes, he insisted." Evelyn touched her arm gently. "Go, baby. I'll be right here." Inside the dimly lit room, Sterling lay hooked up to monitors, the rhythmic beeping of machines filling the silence. His face looked smaller without the armor of tailored suits and boardroom lights. When his eyes flickered open, they found hers instantly. "Aisha," he rasped, his voice thin but sharp. "Come closer." She stepped forward, gripping the rail of his bed. "I'm here." His trembling hand reached toward the nightstand, where a stack of papers lay under a lawyer's folder. "I tried to sign my will. They won't let me finish. The board, they'll bury you if I don't make this official." Her heart pounded. "Then let me help. What do I do?" He coughed, wincing. "Take the papers. My lawyer is waiting outside. You must witness my signature. Once it's done, you'll have legal standing. They can't erase you." Her throat tightened. "But will you survive?" A faint smile touched his lips. "If I don't, this will be my way of standing for you." At last. She left the room briefly to fetch the lawyer, a gray-haired man with glasses perched on his nose. His hands shook as he carried the documents. "The board knows he's weak. They're trying to stall, but we'll get this signed tonight if it's the last thing I do." Back inside, Sterling struggled upright, pen in hand. Aisha watched as he scrawled his name on the papers, his testament, his acknowledgement, his legacy. The strokes were uneven, shaky, but real. She signed as witness, her hand steadier than she thought possible. When it was done, Sterling leaned back, exhausted but relieved. Now, they can't erase you, no matter what they try. But outside the ICU, Malcolm Price was already on the move. He stormed into the hospital with 2 board lawyers in tow, his expression thunderous. "This is outrageous," he barked at staff. "He's not of sound mind. Any signatures tonight are invalid." Aisha and Dana stepped into the hall, blocking his way. Dana's voice cut like steel. "You don't get to decide that, Malcolm. The court will," Price sneered. "Do you think a judge will take the word of a 17-year-old girl over an entire board of directors?" Aisha's eyes flashed. "It's not just my word anymore, it's his. In ink." For once, Malcolm faltered, his jaw tightening. He spun on his heel, snapping at his lawyers. "Then we fight harder." By morning, the hospital grounds were a battlefield of narrative. Reporters swarmed the gates demanding updates. Some claimed Sterling had died. Others speculated the will was forged. Conspiracy theories multiplied by the hour. Inside, Aisha sat by his bedside, clutching the signed papers. Evelyn stood behind her, stroking her hair. "You did what you could," Evelyn whispered. "Now it's in the hands of the courts and the people." Aisha looked at her father, his chest rising and falling with mechanical assistance. "I don't want just his name," she murmured. "I wanted a father. But maybe this is the only way he knows how to give me something back." Later that day, Dana and Arielle pulled her aside. "The press is running wild," Dana said. "We can't control it anymore, but we can channel it. If you speak now, not as a victim, not as a pawn, but as his daughter standing on her own, you can shift the tide." Aisha's stomach nodded. And if I stay silent? Then Malcolm writes the story, Arielle said simply. Aisha nodded slowly. Then I'll speak. For me, for Mom, for him. That evening, she stood at a podium hastily erected outside the hospital. Reporters swarmed, cameras blazing. The crowd of protesters pressed close, their chants fading to silence as she approached. Her voice trembled at first, but then found strength. My father is fighting for his life inside these walls, but outside, people are fighting over what I mean to him, to his company, to his legacy. Let me be clear, I don't want his money, I don't want his empire, I want the truth. He admitted I am his daughter, he signed it, and no amount of noise will erase that. She held up the signed will, the camera zooming on the faint but unmistakable scrawl of Sterling Vale's name. The crowd erupted. Some cheered, others shouted accusations, but the words were out. Unstoppable. Malcolm watched the broadcast from his office, his glass trembling in his hand. She's going to ruin everything. One of his allies muttered, or she'll make herself untouchable. Back in the hospital room, Sterling stirred faintly, eyes fluttering. For a moment he saw the television, his daughter's voice strong and steady. A weak smile crossed his lips. That's my girl, he whispered, before slipping back into the rhythm of the machines. The morning after Aisha revealed the signed will, the city buzzed like a hive split in two. On every newsstand, headlines screamed, Vale names secret daughter in last testament. Teen heiress or teen hoax. Corporate empire in turmoil. Board faces collapse amid hidden legacy. At the hotel, Aisha scrolled through clips with bleary eyes. Every channel had her face, her voice, her locket. Supporters called her brave. Critics sneered about manipulation. Conspiracies swirled, forged signatures, hidden agendas, even wild claims that she was part of a corporate coup. Evelyn gently pulled the phone from her daughter's hand. Enough, baby. Don't let them poison you. But Aisha's gaze stayed fixed on the TV, where Malcolm Price appeared in a sleek studio, his voice calm but sharp as a blade. Sterling Vale is gravely ill, he said, hands folded. Any document signed under duress or medical instability cannot be trusted. We urge the courts to reject this so-called will, and we caution the public against a dangerous narrative being spun by opportunists. There it was again, that word. Opportunist. Aisha clenched her fists. He won't stop until he destroys me. Dana muttered, then we don't stop either. At Vale Systems headquarters, Malcolm convened an emergency meeting. The board sat around a long table, their faces strained. Markets are unstable, one director said. Investors want reassurance. Then we reassure them, Malcolm replied coolly. We frame her as a distraction, a teenage girl manipulated by outside forces. We question her credibility, her background, her motives. By the time the courts decide, her image will be shredded. Another director hesitated. And if Vale survives long enough to reaffirm her? Malcolm's eyes hardened. Then we make sure his voice doesn't carry farther than that hospital bed. The room fell into uneasy silence. Meanwhile, in Sterling's hospital room, machines hummed as he drifted between wakefulness and exhaustion. But when he stirred and saw Aisha seated beside him, the fire in his eyes briefly returned. They're coming for you harder now, he whispered. But remember, truth isn't noise, it's a stone. And noise breaks against stone. Aisha swallowed hard. I'm not sure I'm stone, Dad. I feel like glass. He reached weakly for her hand. Glass can cut. The words struck deep. She squeezed his hand gently, afraid it might shatter. That afternoon, Dana received a call from one of her contacts in the press. She put it on speaker. Aisha, listen carefully. The board just leaked a file, old disciplinary notes from your school. They're painting you as reckless, saying you skipped classes, that you're unstable. Evelyn gasped. That's ridiculous. She missed classes because she worked double shifts at the pool. To help me. The caller sighed. Doesn't matter. They'll twist it. It'll be on headlines by evening. Aisha's chest tightened. They're using my whole life against me. Dana's eyes narrowed. Then we counter with your whole life. The rescues, the hard work, the nights you stayed up studying after shifts, we put the truth out before they can drown it. That evening, Aisha recorded a video with Dana and Arielle's help. She sat in front of a plain wall, the locket visible, her voice steady. I've made mistakes. I'm not perfect, but I'm not a fraud. I saved my father's life because it was the right thing to do, not because of a fortune. I worked double shifts, I studied late, I fought to be seen, and I'll keep fighting now, not for money, but for truth. The video went viral within hours. Hashtag surged again, this time more supportive. #stand with Aisha, #truth not noise. But Malcolm's smear still spread too. Talk shows played both clips back to back, turning her life into a debate stage. Back at the hospital, Sterling's condition worsened. Doctors whispered about complications, about limited time. Evelyn wept quietly in the corner. Aisha sat by his bed, clutching the will. "I don't care about the money," she whispered. "I just want you to see me, to see that I stood." Sterling's eyes fluttered open. "I see you," he whispered hoarsely. "Stronger than me, braver than me. You are the part of me I should never have left behind." Tears blurred her vision. She bent her head to his chest, listening to the faint, uneven rhythm of his heart. Meanwhile, in the shadows of the boardroom, Malcolm raised a glass. "She may have won the crowd today," he told his allies. "But tomorrow, we hit her where it hurts. We'll bury her in court, in media, in every corner until the world doubts her again. She doesn't realize this isn't a sprint, it's a war." What he didn't know was that Aisha, sitting at her father's bedside, had already realized that. And despite the fear clawing her chest, she whispered to herself, "If it's a war, then I'll fight. Not with money, not with noise, with truth." And outside the hospital window, candles flickered in the hands of strangers who had gathered, chanting softly into the night. Truth matters. Truth matters. The next morning, the attack came in waves. First, tabloid headlines screamed across every newsstand, "Vale's secret daughter? More like secret liar. Teenager school scandals exposed. Aisha Moore, the heiress who never was." Then came the talk shows. Guests debated her life as if she were a case file. "She skipped school, she fought with teachers," one pundit argued. Another countered, "She worked jobs to support her mother. How is that scandal?" But the first only smirked. The optics are bad. Investors don't like instability. By afternoon, her phone was a storm of notifications. Memes mocking her, strangers dissecting her voice, her face, even her braids. Aisha stared at the screen, numb. "They're trying to turn me into a caricature." Evelyn sat beside her, arms wrapped tight around her daughter. "Baby, don't let them. You know who you are." But the words felt small against the roar of the world outside. At Vale Systems headquarters, Malcolm Price poured himself coffee and smiled. "She's rattled," he said to the board. "The smear is working. By the time the courts move, public opinion will already be poisoned. No judge wants to side with a scandal." One director shifted uneasily. "What if Vale speaks again? If he makes another public declaration?" Malcolm cut him off. "He won't, not in his condition. And if he tries, no one will believe a dying man over an entire board." The others nodded, though unease lingered like smoke in the air. But Sterling Vale was not finished. In his hospital room, weak and pale, he asked for a camera crew. Doctors protested, Evelyn hesitated, but Sterling was insistent. "If I don't speak now, I may never get the chance." When the crew arrived, he straightened in bed, oxygen mask pulled aside. His voice was faint but fierce. "My name is Sterling Vale, and let me be clear, Aisha Moore is my daughter. I wronged her and her mother. I abandoned them. That shame is mine. But her courage in saving me, her strength in facing this storm, those are truths no smear campaign can erase. If Vale Systems chooses to deny her, then Vale Systems denies me." The video aired within hours. It shook the narrative like a hammer on glass. In the hotel, Aisha and Evelyn watched, stunned. "He said it again," Aisha whispered, "publicly, stronger this time." Evelyn wiped her eyes. "He's finally standing for you." Dana smiled grimly. "And now the board is cornered. They can't call you a fraud without calling their founder a liar." But Arielle leaned forward, caution in her eyes. "Cornered animals are dangerous. They'll strike harder." Sure enough, that evening, Malcolm appeared on television, flanked by lawyers. "Mr. Vale is gravely ill," he said coldly. "We respect his condition, but the board cannot allow a corporation of this size to be destabilized by personal drama. We will continue to protect shareholder interests above all." The message was clear. Sterling's words might carry emotion, but the board carried money, and money still ruled. Back in the hotel, the pressure pushed Aisha to the edge. She paced the room, clutching her locket, her chest tight. I can't breathe with all of this. Every time I take a step forward, they crush me harder. Maybe I should just stop. Evelyn gripped her shoulders firmly. No, baby, you can't stop. You're not just fighting for you anymore. You're fighting for every truth they've buried under money and power. Dana added, if you give up now, Malcolm wins, and he'll rewrite history to erase you completely. Aisha's voice cracked. But I'm just one girl. How do I fight an empire? For a moment, silence filled the room. Then Arielle spoke softly. Not as one girl, as a voice that others will echo if you let them. Truth multiplies when it's spoken. The words sank deep. Aisha looked at the letters on the desk, the will in her bag, and her reflection in the dark hotel window. She no longer saw just a frightened teenager. She saw a spark. That night, she went live online. No handlers, no podium, just her sitting on her bed, the locket visible. I'm Aisha Moore. Some of you know me as the girl who pulled a man from a burning yacht. Some of you know me as the girl in the headlines. But I want you to know me as myself. I am not perfect. I've stumbled. I've struggled. But I am not a fraud. My father is Sterling Vale, and he admitted it, twice. The board can call me names, but truth doesn't bend to shareholders. It stands. Tears glistened in her eyes, but her voice was steady. If they think silence will save them, they're wrong, because I will not be silent again. The live stream ended. Within minutes, clips spread across social media, millions sharing her words. Hashtag soared anew. Hatch we hear Aisha. Hatch truth over noise. Hashtag not silent. At Vale Systems headquarters, Malcolm slammed his laptop shut, fury shaking his hands. She's turning into a symbol, and symbols are harder to kill than scandals. In the hospital, Sterling watched the live stream replay on a tablet, pride softening his lined face. That's my daughter, he whispered again, before drifting into sleep. And in the hotel, Aisha sat with Evelyn, Dana, and Arielle, her heart racing but lighter than before. For the first time, she felt not like prey, but like a fighter. The empire was striking at her with everything it had, but she was no longer afraid to strike back, with truth as her weapon. The morning after Aisha's live stream, the world woke up to her voice. Clips of her trembling but steady words dominated news cycles. Talk shows replayed the moment she said, I will not be silent again, and hashtags trended across platforms. Hatch we hear Aisha, hash truth over noise, hat not silent. Outside Vale Systems headquarters, the crowd of protesters doubled. What had been a mix of supporters and skeptics now leaned visibly toward her. Handmade signs read, Stand with Aisha, and silence ends here. Candles flickered in the hands of strangers who had never met her but felt her fight. Inside the hotel, Aisha scrolled through messages until her eyes blurred. Some were cruel still, but many brimmed with hope. My dad left too. Hearing you speak gave me strength. They can't bury truth forever. Keep going. You're braver than all of them. For the first time, she realized she wasn't just carrying her own battle. She had become a mirror for others. Evelyn hugged her from behind. See, you lit a spark. But Dana's voice was cautious. And sparks attract wind. Malcolm won't sit back while you turn into a movement. At Vale Systems, Malcolm paced the boardroom like a general in retreat. She's winning hearts. That cannot happen. Symbols are dangerous. We must reframe her as reckless before the public locks her into sainthood. A lawyer cleared his throat. What do you propose? Malcolm's eyes narrowed. We leak internal documents, real ones this time. Contracts signed under Sterling's watch, controversial deals. We let the blame fall on him, but by association it taints her. If she wants to inherit him, let her inherit his sins. The room murmured uneasily. One director finally spoke. If we do that, we destroy Sterling's reputation entirely. Malcolm's lips curled. Better his ghost than our empire. Meanwhile, Sterling fought against weakness in his hospital bed. Watching his daughter's live stream again, he whispered to his nurse, She's stronger than I ever was, but she can't fight this war alone. When Evelyn visited, he grabbed her hand. Bring me a camera again, one more time. If they plan to smear me, I'll own my sins before they can weaponize them. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. Sterling, you're too weak. I'm too weak not to, he rasped. That evening, Aisha sat with Dana and Arielle, staring at her laptop. News tickers scrolled with ominous headlines. Leaked Vale documents coming soon. Analysts speculated what they contained. Bribes, offshore accounts, labor scandals. Her stomach churned. If they release those, won't people believe I'm tied to it too? Dana nodded grimly. That's Malcolm's play. He wants guilt by bloodline. If you're his daughter, you inherit the skeletons. Evelyn slammed her hand on the table. Then let's show the world who really put those skeletons there. Don't let them twist it. Aisha stared at the locket around her neck. Then I'll speak again, not to run from his sins, but to show I'm not afraid of them. Hours later, Sterling beat her to it. From his hospital bed, his frail voice filled the airwaves once more. To the public, if documents surface about Vale systems, know this. They are real. And they are mine. I signed contracts I should not have. I made choices I regret. But do not lay those sins at my daughter's feet. She is innocent of them. If punishment is due, let it be mine, not hers. The confession hit like an earthquake. Markets shook harder. Vale Systems stock slid further. But on the streets, cheers erupted. At the hotel, Aisha wept watching the broadcast. He's shielding me, even now. Evelyn stroked her daughter's hair. For once, he's standing where he should have all along. Dinah exhaled. And now Malcolm's cornered. If he attacks you, he attacks a dying man's final words. That's a risky move, even for him. But Malcolm wasn't done. In his office, he slammed his fist onto the desk. He thinks one confession will undo decades of deals? No, if we can't break her, we break him. Tomorrow, we petition the court to declare Sterling incompetent. If his signature is invalid, the will is invalid. The girl loses everything. His allies nodded grimly. The battle lines were clear. Truth against power, confession against erasure. That night, Aisha stood at the hotel window watching candles flicker in the crowd below. Her phone buzzed endlessly with messages, both love and hate. She pressed the locket to her chest, whispering to herself, I won't stop. Not until the truth is louder than their noise. Evelyn joined her at the glass. Baby, you've already changed more than you realize. Look at them. Together, they watched as strangers chanted her name. Not as a scandal, but as a symbol. And in his hospital bed, Sterling whispered the same words to himself. That's my daughter. 2 days after Sterling's televised confession, the courthouse was filled to bursting. Reporters clogged the marble steps, protesters pressed against barricades, and security officers barked at the crowd to stay back. Inside, the tension was suffocating. Aisha sat at the defense table, her locket glinting beneath the harsh lights. Evelyn sat behind her, hands clasped tight, while Dana and Arielle whispered strategy. Across the aisle, Malcolm Price leaned back in his chair, smug, his attorneys armed with stacks of binders. The judge entered, her gavel cracking like thunder. We are here today to consider Vale Systems' petition to declare Mr. Sterling Vale legally incompetent at the time he signed his most recent testament. Counsel, proceed! The company's lead attorney rose. Your Honor, Mr. Vale is a man in grave decline. He suffered cardiac events, relies on oxygen, and by medical testimony is not of sound mind. Any will signed under such conditions is invalid. This supposed daughter, Ms. Moore, is exploiting his weakened state for personal gain. Gasps rippled through the room. Aisha's fists clenched under the table. Dana stood, her voice steady but fierce. Your Honor, this is not exploitation. This is acknowledgement. Mr. Vale has confessed repeatedly and publicly on live television that Aisha Moore is his daughter. He signed willingly, and he did so knowing the cost. The board seeks not truth but control. The judge's eyes narrowed. We will hear testimony. Call your first witness. Malcolm's team called a doctor from the hospital who nervously described Sterling's fragile state. He was weak, yes, his condition serious. But was he lucid? The lawyer pressed. The doctor hesitated. Lucid, at times, but under stress, yes, he could falter. Malcolm's lawyer smirked. So his capacity to make decisions was questionable. Dana leapt up. Objection. The witness admitted he was lucid. Capacity is not perfection. It is presence of mind. And Mr. Vale had presence enough to face the world and confess what he had hidden for years. The judge allowed it to stand. Then came the moment Dana had prepared Aisha for. Your Honor, she said, the defense calls Aisha Moore. Whispers erupted as Aisha rose, walking to the witness stand. Cameras in the gallery clicked furiously. She swore the oath, her heart pounding. Dana's voice softened. Aisha, tell the court in your own words. What happened the night your father signed the will? Aisha gripped the edge of the stand. He asked me to come. He was weak, but his eyes, his words, they were clear. He said the board would bury me unless he signed. He wanted to give me what silence had stolen all my life, the truth. He signed with his own hand, and I signed as witness. Dana nodded. And what did that mean to you? Her voice cracked but grew steady. It meant I wasn't invisible anymore, that he saw me, not as a headline, not as a scandal, as his daughter. The courtroom hushed. Even the judge's stern gaze softened slightly. Malcolm's lawyer rose for cross-examination. Ms. Moore, isn't it true you have benefited from publicity, interviews, attention, even donations? Aisha blinked. I never asked for donations. I never wanted fame. I wanted my father. He pressed harder. But you could stand to inherit billions, correct? Her eyes flashed. If I cared about money, I wouldn't have worked double shifts at a pool to help my mom pay rent. I wouldn't have walked into fire to save a man who had abandoned me. I don't want their billions. I want the truth. Murmurs rippled through the gallery. Dana allowed a faint smile. At that moment, the double doors at the back of the courtroom swung open. Gasps filled the air. Sterling Vale, pale but upright, entered with the help of 2 aides. His oxygen tank rolled beside him, but his eyes were blazing. He walked slowly to the front, ignoring the judge's startled warning. Your Honor, his voice rasped, but it carried. I am not incompetent. I may be dying, but I am not dead. And while I still breathe, let it be known, Aisha Moore is my daughter. I signed with clarity, with purpose, because I will not let silence bury her again. The courtroom erupted. Cameras flashed. The judge pounded her gavel, calling for order. Malcolm's face drained of color, fury burning beneath his calm mask. The judge finally restored quiet. Mr. Vale, while your presence is irregular, the court acknowledges your statement. We will adjourn for deliberation. As the gavel fell, Aisha met her father's eyes across the room. For the first time, there was no regret in them, only pride. She returned to the defense table, her chest heaving, Evelyn wrapping her arms around her tightly. Dana leaned close. That just changed everything. Outside, the courthouse steps became a battleground of chants and cameras. Supporters shouted her name while critics tried to push back. Aisha stood with Evelyn, Dana, and Arielle as microphones thrust forward. Do you think the judge will rule in your favor? Is this the end of Vale systems? Are you ready to carry the weight of an empire? Aisha held her mother's hand and lifted her chin. I'm not here to carry an empire. I'm here to carry the truth. Whatever comes, I won't be silent. The crowd roared, her words echoing off the courthouse walls like a bell. In the shadows of the courthouse corridor, Malcolm watched, jaw tight. He turned to his lawyer. She's winning hearts. If the judge sides with her, we lose everything, so we make sure the judge doesn't. The lawyer hesitated. You mean? I mean influence, Malcolm snapped. The kind money buys. If truth is her weapon, money will be ours. Back in the hotel that night, Aisha sat with her mother, reading another of Sterling's old letters. Her father's words echoed louder now, alive in his presence in court. One day, I hope to be the man my daughter can stand beside without shame. Tears slid down her cheeks. For the first time, she believed he had begun to mean it. But outside their window in the glittering city, forces were already moving to ensure truth would not win easily. 2 days later, the courthouse was packed again. Everyone expected a ruling. Would the judge validate Sterling Vale's will? Or would she side with the board and strip Aisha of everything? The marble halls buzzed with speculation. Aisha sat nervously at the defense table, her fingers curled around her locket. Evelyn squeezed her shoulder. Dana and Arielle sat poised, their binders stacked neatly, but tension pulsed through the air like static before a storm. The judge entered, her gavel echoing across the chamber. After careful review, she began, the court acknowledges the complexity of this matter. Testimony has been powerful. However, given the stakes, billions in assets, questions of corporate control, and the validity of a dying man's will, I am compelled to delay my ruling. Further evidence and independent medical evaluation are required before I render judgment. The gavel struck once more. Court adjourned. Gasps rippled through the room. Reporters scrambled for the exit, desperate to blast the news first. Malcolm Price's lips curved into a thin smile. Aisha's chest sank. Delayed? She whispered. After everything she delayed? Dana placed a hand on her shoulder. This isn't a loss, it's a stall. And sometimes stalls mean the other side is scared. Outside, the courthouse steps erupted into chaos. Reporters fired questions from every angle. Do you think the delay is a sign you'll lose? Will you demand an immediate DNA test? What's your next move, Aisha? She froze, deer-like under the barrage. But then she remembered her father's weak voice in court. Truth isn't noise, it's a stone. So she lifted her chin. A delay isn't silence. It just means the truth needs more time. And I can wait, because truth doesn't expire. The crowd roared, half in support, half in doubt. Back at Vale Systems headquarters, Malcolm leaned over the boardroom table. Perfect. The longer this drags, the weaker she gets. Public attention burns fast. People will get tired, they'll move on. One director looked uneasy. She's gaining too much sympathy. The crowds outside, the hashtags online, they're growing, not shrinking. Malcolm's eyes narrowed. Then we douse the flame. If the court won't silence her, we will. Through influence, through leaks, through fear. She may have won some hearts, but money still wins wars. Meanwhile, at the hotel, Dana huddled with Aisha, Evelyn, and Arielle. The delay means we can use time too. If we build momentum outside the court, public rallies, media appearances, grassroots campaigns, they can't bury you with influence. Aisha frowned. You mean, fight them with the crowd? Dana nodded. Exactly. You've become a symbol. It's time to use that. Evelyn looked alarmed. But she's just a girl. She can't lead a movement. Aisha surprised them both. Maybe I can't lead, but I can speak, and people are already listening. The next day, Aisha spoke at a vigil outside the hospital where Sterling still lay fighting. Hundreds gathered, candles glowing in the dusk. Some held signs, truth over noise. We hear Aisha. Others simply stood silently, faces lit by flames. She stepped up to the microphone, her voice trembling but growing steadier. They want me to disappear into silence, but silence is what built the lies in the first place. I'm not here to take an empire. I'm here to take back my story. And if that story can give strength to others who feel buried, then maybe this fight isn't just mine anymore. Cheers rippled through the crowd. Hashtags trended again before the night was over. # truth doesn't expire. # stand with Aisha. At the hospital, Sterling watched the vigil on television. His voice was barely a whisper, but pride glowed in his eyes. She's already stronger than I ever was. The nurse adjusted his oxygen mask gently. Rest, sir. You'll need your strength. But Sterling shook his head. I'll need my truth. Later that night, as the vigil dispersed, Dana received a message from one of her contacts inside Vale Systems. She read it quickly, her face paling. They're moving faster than we thought. Malcolm's meeting with donors, politicians, even a judge's aide. He's trying to buy the outcome. Arielle cursed under her breath. So he's going to bury the ruling before it's even written. Aisha's heart clenched. If the system is already bought, then how do we fight? Dana met her eyes, calm but fierce. By making the cost of burying you higher than the cost of acknowledging you. If the people are with you, Malcolm can't buy every voice. The next morning, Aisha woke to see her face splashed across newspapers again. But this time, the headlines weren't all about scandal. Teen heiress speaks at vigil. Truth doesn't expire. Crowds gather in support of Aisha Moore. Vale daughter or not, her words strike a chord. She smiled faintly. For once, the narrative wasn't just being written about her, it was beginning to echo from her. But Malcolm wasn't done. Late that afternoon, while protesters rallied outside Vale headquarters, a black car pulled up behind the building. Malcolm slipped inside, flanked by 2 aides. We have 1 shot left, he muttered. If we can't silence her through court or scandal, we silence her by doubt. DNA. We leak that she refuses a test. We paint her as afraid. Fear is poison. It spreads faster than truth. His aide nodded grimly. And if she agrees to the test? Malcolm's eyes were cold. Then we make sure it disappears before it proves her case. Back at the hotel, Aisha sat with her letters spread across the desk, her father's words bleeding into her heart. She whispered aloud as if he were listening, I'm not afraid. Not anymore. If DNA is what they want, then DNA is what they'll get. Let the truth speak louder than their noise. Evelyn laid a hand on her daughter's shoulder, her voice trembling but proud. That's my girl. And outside, chants rose again, louder than the night before. Truth matters! Truth matters! The courthouse was overflowing the morning of the final hearing. Protesters pressed against barricades, their chants echoing off marble walls. Truth matters! Truth matters! News vans lined the street, satellite dishes aimed skyward. The world was watching. Inside, Aisha sat at the defense table, her locket warm against her skin. Evelyn squeezed her hand, Dana stacked the binders like shields, and Arielle leaned close with a whispered reminder. This is your moment. Whatever happens, you speak your truth. Across the aisle, Malcolm Price sat rigid, his lawyers grim-faced. He had played every card. Smears, leaks, even bribery rumors whispered in the corridors. But now the gavel would fall, and money could not mute the world's eyes. The judge entered, the room rising. She adjusted her glasses, her voice steady. This court has reviewed testimony, documents, and public statements. We have weighed corporate interest against personal identity, money against truth. The silence was suffocating. Vale Systems' petition to void Mr. Vale's testament on grounds of incompetence is hereby denied. The will stands. Sterling Vale's acknowledgement of Aisha Moore as his daughter is valid. Gasps filled the chamber. Evelyn covered her mouth with trembling hands. Dana grinned fiercely. Arielle exhaled like she had been holding her breath for weeks. Malcolm's face blanched, fury smoldering beneath the mask of calm. But the judge wasn't finished. Furthermore, while this ruling addresses family matters, questions of corporate governance remain. Those will proceed separately. But let the record show, silence cannot erase blood and fear cannot erase truth. The gavel struck. Outside, the courthouse steps erupted in chaos. Reporters surged forward, shouting questions. Aisha, do you feel vindicated? What's next for you now? Will you take control of Vale Systems? Microphones swarmed, cameras flashed. For a moment, Aisha felt the old panic rise, overwhelm, noise, doubt. But then she remembered the vigil, the chants, her father's whispered words. Glass can cut. So she lifted her chin, her voice steady. I didn't fight for money. I didn't fight for power. I fought because silence stole my story, and I refused to let it steal more. Today, the truth was heard. And no board, no smear, no noise will take that away. Cheers erupted, drowning out the jeers. Hashtags exploded across phones in the crowd. Hashtag truth over noise. Hash we hear Aisha. Hashtag justice for her. At Vale Systems headquarters, chaos reigned. Shareholders flooded the lines with fury. Malcolm Price stormed into the boardroom, his voice raw. It isn't over. We can still fight corporate control. But one director shook his head. It is over. She has public support. The will is valid, and Sterling still lives to defend her. The more we fight, the worse we look. You've cost us billions, Malcolm. Step down. For the first time, Malcolm's mask cracked. Rage twisted his face, but he saw the truth in the eyes around the table. The empire he thought unshakable was slipping from his grasp. In the hospital, Sterling watched the news from his bed. Tears welled as he saw his daughter's face on the courthouse steps, defiant and proud. She did it, he whispered. She carried what I couldn't. His nurse smiled softly. She didn't just carry it, Mr. Vale. She lit it on fire. Sterling chuckled weakly, coughing through the pain. That's my girl. That evening, Aisha returned to the hotel room, exhausted but lighter than she'd felt in weeks. Evelyn wrapped her arms around her. Baby, you stood taller than anyone could have asked. I'm so proud. Dana raised a toast with a paper cup of coffee. To truth, Arielle added, and to the girl who turned it into a movement. Aisha laughed, tears slipping down her cheeks. I'm just a girl who pulled someone out of fire. I didn't mean to start a movement. Evelyn kissed her temple. Sometimes that's how movements begin, one person refusing to let the flames win. Outside, the crowds didn't disperse. They sang, chanted, and held candles high into the night. Strangers hugged one another, united not by money or power, but by the spark of truth. From the hotel window, Aisha watched, her locket warm against her chest. It's bigger than me now, she whispered. Dana nodded. And that's exactly why they'll never bury it again. Back in his office, Malcolm sat alone, the once bustling boardroom silent. He stared at the news ticker scrolling across the screen. Court upholds will. Aisha Moore confirmed as Sterling Vale's daughter. For the first time, he realized he had lost not just a battle, but the war. And outside, in the streets below, chants echoed louder than his wealth could ever buy. Truth matters. Truth matters. In the final quiet of the night, Aisha sat with Evelyn, writing in a notebook of her own. Dear future, she wrote, I don't know what comes next, but I know this. Silence no longer owns me. My voice is mine, and I will use it, not to build empires, but to build truth. She closed the book, the city lights reflecting in her eyes. For the first time in her life, she felt free.